Alright, hey guys, so right now I'm here with LOD, who's the current mid laner of LoL. How's it going?
It's going very good. How about you?
Thank you, it's going well, thanks for asking. So I wanted to begin by talking a bit about your career before you were well known for playing on LoL.
Right.
Um, so did you first get your start, how did you first get your start into League of Legends?
Well, starting around season two, I started to take the game really serious, right? Started to climb in elo. I started maining AD carry, and the first team that I was ever asked to join was I believe it was called Brofist Gaming with like Bloodwater, Zion Spartan, Skilly, and one other guy. I can't remember his name. That only lasted about a month, but we were like somewhat successful. The team just fell apart because it's just amateur, it's just how things happen. And then a few months later, I joined a team called Team Green Forest, which wasn't so successful at the time, but I thought I could help them start winning and whatnot. The support asked me to join. I had known him for about a year. His name was Pinku. And so I played on Team Green Forest for about 6 months. I went to MLG Anaheim. I went to GESL. Got like last place in both of those. It was not it was not the greatest experience, but it was cool to go to a LAN and whatnot. And I think after that, I played on a few different amateur teams. Played on one with Atlanta right before the first split of LCS, and the team fell apart because of age restrictions. I was only like 15 at the time. Our jungler was only like 15. So then I tried again on a team called like Team Summon, I think it was, in around November last year, and they had some success, but I ended up leaving the team and just focusing on streaming and whatnot. And so yeah, I've just been on and off amateur teams ever since. And then I believe it was October that I joined LOL Pro, and I've been on it ever since. So
Okay, well, there's been some pretty notable players that you mentioned previously. I would like to ask about them, and what was your experience like playing with them?
well, Bloodwater at the time, I know he's probably the most notable. He was easily the best support I had ever played with. I didn't know it at the time, right? Because he wasn't super well known, but we went into every lane and we just dominated. We won every single lane we played together for the short time we did play together. I believe I only played a couple games with Zion Spartan. Uh, I think he joined the team or accepted the invite to the team like literally a few days before the team fell apart. And Skilly, which a lot of people won't remember, used to be like a really really good player back in season two. And yeah, that's about it.
What position did Skilly? Like, I haven't actually heard of him before,
Skilly was
so.
our mid laner. Yeah,
Um, you also mentioned playing on a team with Atlanta for a while. How was that like?
yeah. Atlanta is a really good player to play with. He's always very innovative. He really understood the game on a strategical level. We were doing extremely well. We were a bunch of pretty much no names. You know, all the teams Atlanta plays on get the name Atlanta's team. And that was actually true. Like he completely led us, and he's an extremely good player and an extremely good person. I was happy playing on a team with him. It was very unfortunate that the LCS had to have an age limit because I think we stood like an okay chance at making it into the LCS at the time.
Could you give us a quick few thoughts about the age limit because you're one of the players that is more notably affected?
Yeah. Well, personally, I don't like it. I can understand exactly where Riot's coming from. They don't want kids just dropping out of school just to chase their dreams of being a pro player when it could never happen. Could just be ruining their future. So I can respect that Riot put an age limit in, but at the same time, in other regions, there are players who are under 17 who are extremely skilled and even participated in the World Championships. I mean, you look at Uzi, like Faker. Uh, there's a lot of young players out there that in North America and EU that miss out on the chance to play in the LCS just because of their age. They're born a year or two later or whatever. So all in all, I don't think it's a bad thing, but it kind of sucks.
Okay, so moving back to the players that I wanted to discuss. You mentioned that you played on Team Summon. Was this with Locust, the former support for Dignitas?
Um, I believe I only played a few games with Locust. I ended up leaving the team just to focus on streaming at some point. Um, yeah, he played on it, I believe, in Riot's little tournament, like because IPL 5 got canceled or whatever. So they went on to play with like Sicko Scott, Locust, Slacko, and a couple other players, and I think they lost. But yeah, I just ended up quitting the team. So
Quick pause, but you're okay. Well, so something else I wanted to ask was, so you mentioned that you ended up taking time off to focus more on streaming. I'd say that you didn't exactly become a well-known streamer. Could you give us some thoughts on why you feel like you didn't break into the streaming scene, whereas other people did?
well, actually, I did for quite a while. I was starting to hit like really high numbers, like 1,000, 10K, 15K,
Hmm.
actually for like a month or two,
Hmm.
and I started to build up like quite a notable stream. But basically, I think around after spring break, my grades were kind of slipping, and I had to stop streaming so much and just focus on
Mm.
school. And then, summer came around, and I just wanted to like hang out with my friends and stuff. So I completely stopped streaming for probably 4 or 5 months, and I just lost. Um, and it's really hard with streaming. You only really get like one, maybe two chances to break into the streaming community and become well known. Like see streamers like Night Blue, Wings of Death, like they hit 10K viewers once, and then everything changed from there on for them. They just always get so many viewers, and for me, I kind of just threw it away, I guess. So yeah.
So then I wanted to ask about the distinction between being a pro player and a streamer, because you seem to think that, like you mentioned earlier, that you stopped playing as on any teams to try to focus on streaming, right?
Yeah.
But like I'd say, like I guess the first generation of pros, they kind of did that like simultaneously. So would you say that in this generation, like they're kind of like antithetical?
Um. Actually, like way back when, like season 1, season 2, as you said, the first generation of pro players, they were able to stream and play competitively because the schedules were a lot lenient, right? Like you'd scrim a lot less than you would nowadays. And now with LCS, you barely have any time to stream whatsoever. You see players on LCS teams streaming like once a week. So yeah, I really don't think it's really possible to stream like full time and play competitively. Even in the amateur scene, a lot of amateur players are still in high school. I am, so balancing trying to play on a team and streaming and going to school is extremely difficult, in my opinion. And that's why I kind of gave up my team to focus on streaming.
But right now, you'd say that is it a better decision to focus on team play rather than streaming? Because right now you are on a team.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you're a good enough player, it's a lot better to focus on playing competitively and just streaming in your spare time because there's a chance that people will just love you and people will. I think my webcam is stuck again. Yeah, as I was saying, there's a chance that when you're just streaming in your spare time, people will go to your stream. You'll get thousands of viewers, and then like that can be a possible career option for you. You can make a lot of money off streaming, but I don't think it's very reliable. I don't think it's as reliable as trying to play competitively because you can make it into the LCS, win tournaments, and just be an extremely good player and get yourself to where you want to be. Whereas with streaming, it's really up to the community whether or not they deem you worthy of having like 10,000 viewers. So yeah.
And then wrapping up thoughts on kind of like breaking into the scene, I wanted to ask if do you think any people who are known more as streamers right now have a chance to, for example, if like Night Blue converted into a pro player, do you think he'd be successful?
Um, it's kind of a touchy subject because I know someone like Night Blue or like Hayam Gosu has a lot of fans. I really think that if they decided to dedicate themselves to trying to become a competitive player, it would definitely be a possibility. But I don't think a lot of like the stream focused players are really capable of playing on a competitive level as is.
So then now I guess we'd move on more to your current time on Team All Pro.
Yeah, sure.
So how did you come to join the team?
It was actually really really weird. Okay, so back in October, I played on a team with just a group of friends, like locally, pretty much, like in BC. High elo players, like good players, but just friends. It's called the Gentleman's Guild, and I was just subbing in for them as an AD carry, and then all of a sudden, LAW Pro at the time was looking for a jungler, and they wanted to pick up Heaven Time, and I was playing on the Gentleman's Guild with Heaven Time, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, that's a great offer. Like, go join LOD Pro. But he decided like he really wanted to bring me and a few other players with him. So what ended up happening was us and Nijaki kind of like merged together. Hanser switched from mid lane to top lane and became a really good top laner, and that was how Team LOD Pro kind of formed. And yeah.
Did you have experience playing against the previous Team All Pro lineup? The one with Cruiser, the Bruiser, Trick Z,
Um,
Nijaki,
I
Cop.
subbed for them a couple times. That's about it. I didn't really have a team at the time, like a real team, so never scrimmed them, but subbed once or twice.
How successful do you think that lineup would have been in the amateur scene?
It's so hard to say. I mean, they could have done great, or they could have flopped. I'm not really in a position to say. I think Cop is a really great AD carry. I think he would have thrived in the amateur scene. He would have just probably dominated every other AD carry. Tricks, I barely saw him play. I saw him play on CLG for a little bit, and he seemed to do okay. Not really too sure. Um, who else is on the roster? Cruiser obviously went on to join Dignitas. I think he's a really good player. Um, and Nijaki is very good as well. I can't really say how far they would have gone in the amateur scene. Yeah.
Okay, so now I want to talk about, I guess, your kind of your current lineup. Like, actually, not the current one, but the one with Nijaki. Could you give us a quick rundown of like the individual players, their strengths, and how the team dynamic worked?
The roster with Nijaki
Yeah,
or the current actual roster?
both. Like first the one with Nijaki, and then what differences
Right.
happened with you switching into mid lane?
Right. Okay. So, uh, when you're an amateur team and you're not winning consistently, then I like to think of it as like you're just not very good because unless you're at the tip top, you're not going to make LCS. Like you look at LMQ and you know that they have like a 90% chance of breaking into the LCS just because they're dominating everywhere. So for us, right, we're very inconsistent, you know. We would take games off like really good teams here and there. We were doing great in scrims, like we had a great win record versus LCS teams, but then when it came to like the tournaments and stuff that mattered, we were not pulling the results we wanted, right? And I think our players had a lot of strengths. I think Hanser, probably one of the best top lanes in the amateur scene by a mile. He seems to just crush almost every other top laner he's against. I think Nijaki, he was great at playing like a lot of the Ziggs, the Gragas, the farm-oriented champions, and just sieging and holding sieges. That was his strength. Didn't really play assassins a whole lot or anything like that. He was very reliable. Um, my strength, I don't really know. I think I played a pretty good AD carry, but I didn't really synergize with Lopali very well. I think he is a very good player. He shot calls extremely well, and he understands the mechanics of the lane, bottom lane extremely well. But I just didn't synergize very well with him, so I decided to try and swap to mid lane, and I did that because I've been playing the game for a very long time. And I've played every role over the course of my four or so years playing the game, and mid lane has always been a secondary role for me. So I feel like I adapted to that like fairly well. Got a lot to learn, but I'm getting there. So yeah.
Uh, could you talk a little bit about the circumstances with Nijaki leaving the team?
Right. I mean, Nijaki basically just chose to focus on his life, and ultimately, I think it was a positive change, and the team like, has rebounded quickly and very well from it. Um, I mean, he's a great player, but he just chose to focus on other things. And of course, he's still a part of the Curse family, and he'll always be a member of the team as a sub. But it wasn't quite working out, you know. As I said, if you're not winning consistently, then you're not good enough. So we decided we had to change something up, and yeah,
So was this a decision on the team's part, or like a decision from him, or like kind of
it
mutual?
was it was a mutual decision, definitely. As I said, he just decided to focus on other things, and you know we lost two Coke League qualifiers in a row. That's really hard on the team. So we mutually just decided to switch the roster up and try new things. So
Could you talk a little bit about Hoodstomp, the AD carry who joined the team?
right, Hood Stomp. I think Hoodstomp is an incredibly good player. I remember way back he played on CLG Black. I think that was his only competitive team. After that, I don't think he reappeared in the scene a whole lot. I think he played Zabop squad with Low Pally, and he's always been really good friends with Low Pally, and they always played together fairly well. So it was natural that we were the first. He was the first AD carry that we would try out, and we played a bunch of games with him, and it just seemed to fit like pretty well, and we decided to pick him up. So
Could you speak a little bit about Zubop Squad actually? Because when the lineup was first announced, I think there was like an okay amount of hype for them.
yeah, actually, I don't know like a whole lot about them, just from what Low Pally told me. He said they were basically doing extremely well in like all their scrims, like just completely trashing almost every team they play against in scrims. And basically, the team straight up fell apart because their mid laner at the last second wanted to switch to AD carry or something like that, and they couldn't find a new mid laner, and that is what killed Zabop squad. They after that they just they blew up as a team and disbanded. Yeah,
Well,
I
how?
mean that's a bit of a long story short, but from what I heard, that is about what happened. So very unfortunate. Yeah.
How um, okay, so then I wanted to moving on from I guess the current team lineup that you guys had. I want to talk about I guess your experiences in the Coke League slash NACL.
Okay. Well, first Coke League came around, and we thought like we were gonna do extremely well, right? As any team would. And we go in, and we're versus Complexity Red, and like we've been beating every team pretty much, or it felt like that. We go in, we just get I don't know why, but we just got dumpstered by Complexity Red. They pulled out like this weird team comp that we didn't expect with like Kha'Zix mid, Rumble top. No one plays Rumble top, and just like got a bunch of resets for Kha'Zix, and he just snowballed, and we got just completely destroyed. Like we were so demoralized, but decided it was beneficial to stick together as a team, keep going. So then we decided we would just focus all of our effort into NACL and improving in there. And I think overall we did very well in NACL. We actually have a positive win record against almost every team in NACL, except definitely not LMQ, because LMQ just destroys everybody. But we ran into a lot of problems with getting DDoS. All right, I'm sure you remember that. I don't know why, but we would get DDoSed almost every single game. One of our players would get dropped, and like we tried everything. We switched IPs. We tried to set up like proxies. Like we went to great efforts to make sure we didn't get DDoSed, and we did anyways. Like I don't know who would do that or why, but it really sucked. And and it got to the point where we would tell them like it's gonna happen. We're gonna get DDoSed. There's nothing we could do, uh, and then of course it did. I think that impacted our standings quite a bit in NECL, but I was pretty happy with the majority of our games. And then, so anyways, the second Coke League, the second Coke League was also anticlimactic. We, again, as any team would, we went in like super confident. We were excited to place like pretty high in it, and get the chance to go to the LCS studios and all that. And then we beat the first team we were against. They weren't very good. And then we reversed VVV, and we went 1-2. And like we didn't even deserve to win the one game we did win. We played so sloppy. It felt like everybody, I mean myself included, just choked and didn't play as well as we could have. And then again, that is extremely demoralizing. Winning or losing two Coke League qualifications in a row, like it's hard to keep going. But we decided once again, like this team is for the long term, and that we're not going to improve by just disbanding. So we decided to keep going, and that's been the last few months, I guess.
Two more specific things I wanted to ask. First, you mentioned DDoS. There's been a lot of community talk about it. Do you think that league should, I guess, do you think it's like a league problem or like a player problem or like just something that can't be controlled?
It's it's extremely hard to control. It's I guess technically it's a player problem because I mean people get a hold of your Skype and like they shouldn't be able to. I guess people don't set up proxies or VPNs. It's definitely not a Riot problem. It's out of Riot's control. There's nothing they can do about it. But I mean, even though it's technically a player problem, it's hard to put the blame on the players because like, we're just a bunch of kids like trying to play a video game for money basically, right? And some guy randomly comes out of nowhere and hits a switch, and our internet gets knocked offline. Like nobody, it's hard to prepare for that. It's extremely hard to prepare for that. For me personally, it's I have to go to great lengths to change my IP. I'm on Shaw, and they are ridiculous about it. I think I sat on the phone with them for 3 hours trying to get it changed before they finally figured out a way for me to do so. So it's quite a problem. It's quite a problem. But I guess you have to make sure you are actively trying to prevent it by hiding your Skype, not even using Skype at all, even using proxies, VPN. Like, I mean, that's all you can do.
And the other question I wanted to ask was about you guys staying together. So there's been a lot of like, I guess I could call it fluidity, or like there's been a lot of breaking up of teams in the amateur scene. My
Yep.
questions were, what do you think has led you guys to, I guess, stay together when other teams didn't? And the second question is, are there teams that you feel like had they stayed together, they would have been like a really great thing? Like they made a mistake by breaking apart.
Hmm. I think a lot of the teams that broke apart for good reason. Like I don't think. Well, actually, there's one team. I mean, teammate. I believe they're breaking apart after the Texas LAN event, the Lone Star Clash. I believe they're breaking up after that, but they have so much potential. They could be an incredible team, right? And yeah, I believe the reason that we've stayed together, a lot of it comes from our coach, Will, or iVillain, I believe his in-game name is. He definitely holds us together and helps us out. Like you know, teams go through a lot of emotions after an important loss, and instantly the first thought on everybody's mind is like, we're not good enough. We need to break up. But in reality, like that's not going to get you anywhere in the scene. You have to stay dedicated. You have to stay together. You have to keep playing, and only that will actually help you become good. So yeah,
Um, so I wanted to ask about a few of the teams you managed to play against during your time in the NACL.
right, sure,
So I noticed when I was doing some research, I noticed on your Facebook page that you had a very long post about LMQ and why they're good.
yeah.
I think a lot of people might not have seen that, so could you give us a bit like a rundown on your thoughts on that
Right.
team?
So when I look at LMQ, they're a team that is incredibly consistent, and they play similar to how an LCS team would play, which is what makes them successful. They play an objective-based game rather than a kill-based game, which takes basically a lot of discipline on all the players' parts because what happens what happens with amateur teams like us or any amateur team pretty much, uh, they get into the habit of just going for kills when there's no advantage to it whatsoever other than the 300 gold or whatever. LMQ, like if you watch them play, they never do that. They never do that. Every time they try and make a pick or a kill, it's either to come back in the game and like get an objective off it, or not even to come back. Usually they don't have to come back. Usually it's to secure dragon, to secure towers, to secure pushes. Like it's never just random. It's never random whatsoever. And that is how LCS teams play as well. The top LCS teams don't play a kill-based game. They play an objective-based game. I believe there's one standout game from CLG in the LCS where there was only 3 kills, but they still had like a 10k gold lead, and they were dominant the entire time. Like you don't need kills, don't win you games. Objectives win you games, and a lot of teams can't seem to wrap their head around that. It's extremely difficult. Getting kills puts you on highlight reels and makes you look good, and that's what a lot of players want. But at the end of the day, it doesn't get you the W. You don't get the win from it a lot of the time. So that's what's really impressive about LMQ. They're disciplined and they consistently make sure to prioritize objectives over kills.
Do you think that any group of 5 players could possibly transition into this type of winning formula, this objective-based style, with the proper amount of coaching?
I think so. Yeah. I think a lot of the teams playing kill based styles stems from a lack of like good coaching or whatever. If you have a really good coach standing there behind you and like disciplining you when you make stupid mistakes, you shouldn't make those mistakes again, right? And I mean that's what LCS teams do. They're able to constantly go over replays where they make mistakes and be like, I cannot do that again. That is what lost me the game. There's no more doing that for me. and amateur teams they don't really do that. So yeah.
In my interview with Maple Street, he said that the top the top amateur teams, which he classified as themselves, teammate, LMQ, and he mentioned complexity as also having strong like strategic background. He said that those teams were actually stronger strategically than the bottom LCS teams. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I actually. What are the bottom teams right now? I know there's EG, there's XTG, and there's I'm not sure who's the third last, but
It's like those two, and then Curse and Dignitas and Coast are like battling to see who would be the fourth.
mm, to,
Not the fourth, the sixth.
to be honest, I think it's just EG and XTG right now that are behind amateur teams and could potentially be knocked out. I think the other six are actually like pretty good, and a lot of teams would be unable to go toe to toe with them in like a BO3 or a BO1 and would just get crushed. Like, sometimes they don't play super smart like the way they should play, but they can play that way when it matters. So I think they're definitely ahead of at least complexity. I don't know about teammate and LMQ. I feel like LMQ could probably place like at least fourth in LCS. Like they're extremely strong. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of LMQ, my last question was, how much do you watch the Chinese LPL?
I I don't really watch it a whole lot, sadly. I watch a little bit of OMG, and that's about it. Why?
My question was that there's a lot of, I feel like LMQ has had a lot of hype coming into the scene, and people are often talking about like their Chinese gameplay style, but the style you mentioned, which is objective control, seems to be something that is more, I guess, more from Korea or like North America rather than China's like they like their China's like stereotype for playing a gank based style.
Right. Yeah. China's play style is very weird. It's strange to me. I believe OMG is like number one team or something right now, and when I watch their games, it's like they don't outplay people with rotations and like objectives like sneaky dragons or sneaky barons or all that. They just straight up outplay people mechanically. They just win by themselves. It's like it's crazy to watch. I don't think LMQ does that though. I think they've adopted the playstyle that they need to win. I believe overall an objective based playstyle is just incredibly stronger than anything else. I mean, yeah, they may be from China, but like they play, I don't know, they play their own style. It works out incredibly well for them.
Last question on LMQ. You've had the, I guess, fortune of playing against both Xiao Zhao and Vasily in lane. Could you talk a little bit about these players?
Uh, I think those are the two best players on LMQ, and they're both pretty damn good in lane. I don't know. Yeah, I think they're both just incredibly good players. Zhao Zhao especially. I don't think he's underrated anymore, but when he first came here, he definitely was, and he was probably the hardest mid laner I've played against out of everybody in the past like month or so that I role swapped. He just always seems to find a way to get an advantage for himself, whether it's through like farming your race and his race and or roaming and like making things happen. He always gets an advantage. It's insane, and like you watch him play versus almost every other amateur mid laner, and he just crushes them. He flames them. He gets like 200 CS ahead of them by the end of the game, and like it's crazy to watch. And as for Vasily, I think Vasily is incredibly talented as well. He's a very good player. Uh, yeah, it's more difficult to see like the outplays on an AD carry compared to a mid lane, but he plays very consistently well. Probably one of the best Caitlyn's in North America by far. Yeah.
Um, so then I wanted to ask about the other teams that made it into the LCS qualifier tournament, which would be Complexity Black, Cloud9 Tempest, and your sister team Curse Academy. Could you speak about those teams?
Um, I think Curse Academy. I think they're pretty solid right now. It was very unfortunate they couldn't bring their support player Diamond with them. I think something came up at the last minute, so he couldn't play in the LCS. I think if they had him, like, would have been a lot closer. Like, I think they probably would have even beat Complexity. I think Complexity is like a pretty okay team. Like, I don't think they're close to like LMQ or even teammates level, to be honest. But they're definitely a contender. I don't know. Not to like call people out, but I always see like Robert on lands is like notorious for not playing so good in those situations, and you can see it like quite consistently. Like if you watch the complexity black games, uh, it's quite visible. Although I think he's a good player, and if he gets over that, um, like his team could be like a way better contender for LCS. Of course, it's not just him either. I'm not putting all the blame on him. As for like C9T, I think C9T. It feels like their players are really good. It feels like they're missing something. I don't know what it is. Like you watch Alltech play, Alltech is very consistent and he always develops a CS lead. He plays lane very well, plays team fights very well. Um, I don't know. It's like they sometimes lack the ability to really make plays in my mind, like really make things happen, and that is necessary for teams to be like on an LCS level. So yeah, and I already kind of spoke on LMQ quite a bit. So those are the four. Yeah.
What other notable challenger teams would you say there are that weren't in that group? Like you mentioned Team 8, could you talk a bit about them? Or like, do you think there were other teams that were really good but didn't quite get the
Um,
attention or like the lucky draws or something like that?
Let me think for a little second here. I think it was just teammate. I think teammate definitely deserved a chance at the LCS. They're probably the only other team I would mention. I don't know why or how they became so good all of a sudden, but they definitely figured things out, and I think they're honestly gonna win Lone Star. Leave next month. That's the only other team I would mention. Yeah.
So actually, I did want to talk a little bit about your relationship with Curse Academy and the overall Curse, the main Curse
Yeah.
squad. So
Yeah.
what's it like being like having that like sister team relationship and like do you guys get anything out of it, for example?
A lot of people assume that that we're really close or something. We barely talk at all. I mean, I'm really good friends with like Mash Me, and like I was good friends with Sheep, so like, you know, that like we talk to players that we're friends with, but we don't really discuss things like at all whatsoever with Curse Academy or Curse for that matter. So kind of disappointing, but yeah.
You mentioned Mashpee and Sheep. Do you think that how good do you think the Curse Academy squad would have been had they managed to hold on to Sheep?
I think it would have been 100 times better. I don't know. I think Sheep is a very talented player. I think it was a very big loss for them when he joined XTG, and yeah, it was unfortunate for them. Fortunate for the player, obviously, getting to play on an LCS team, but they lost a lot when they lost Sheep.
Uh,
But there's other really good support players out there in the challenger scene, so they were able to pick up Diamond, who I think is pretty good.
um, so kind of building off of that, I wanted to ask about how Sheep ended up joining XCG, which is generally considered like I guess one of the weakest LCS teams.
Yeah.
But had he stayed on Curse Academy, do you think the Curse squad would have been better than XGG? And also, what is it like as an amateur player having the offer to join the to be called up to the I guess the LCS team, but like leaving kind of a better situation? Like I believe Prawley also did that when he joined Complexity and left Velocity, which ended up making LCS over him. So
When you're offered a spot on an LCS team, you don't say no. Like you just don't. It doesn't matter how good of friends you are with the people on your team, unless you're an extremely promising team like LMQ that you know there's like a 95% chance you're going to make LCS. You just can't turn down the offer. It's reliable money. It's a chance to stay in a gaming house and train. It's stability. Like it's incredible to get an offer like that. It is like it does suck quite a bit having to leave your friends behind and stuff, but everybody is understanding in the challenger scene. Like they know that their own personal goals are also to be playing in the LCS, so they would also do it in a heartbeat. So yeah.
okay. So last of all, I wanted to ask about a few like hypothetical teams. Like not sorry, not hypothetical teams, but teams that you had the chance to play against but have since disbanded.
Hmm.
So I wanted to ask about Cognitive and Complexity Red with Golden Glue specifically.
Uh, I don't know what happened to Complexity Red. They kind of fell down a lot. Like they're not a very good team now. I don't think they weren't. They were okay at one point. Like they were beating some good teams. But then they just fell off. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe they need a bit of a new roster. Maybe they just need a coach or something to kick them into gear. But I don't know, like they're just I don't think they're there right now. As for cognitive, that was the roster that Richie joined, right?
Yeah, it was Richie Rich, Zamfira.
Zamfira.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they were overly good. At one point, I think they played like pretty well. Like after the first qualifier, I believe, like the one back in November or whatever. But I don't know. They disbanded for a reason, right? I guess they had conflicting personalities and just couldn't make it work really.
Could you
The
give
few
me
times we scrimmed them, it's pretty easy.
actually could you give me a few
Yeah.
quick thoughts on Richie Rich? He kind of fell off the scene after the cognitive thing.
Oh man, I feel bad for the guy, but also it's hard to feel bad for him. I mean he left his team stranded like a day before the Coke League qualifier. Like I can't respect that. That I don't blame him for falling off the scene. Like after other people see that happen, and it kind of tarnishes your reputation to say the least. Like how do they know that he's not just gonna ditch their team at the last second for a better offer, right? I mean, there's ways to be respectful about it. Even giving them like a week, 2 weeks notice. I mean, for any other job, you give your employer 2 weeks notice and say like, "I'll play for you for this long. You have this long to find a replacement. Good luck. Have fun." You just like there's words cannot describe how like ridiculous that was. That really sucks. Although speaking on him strictly as a player, like his play, I think he has had I don't know how much he plays anymore. A lot of potential as a top laner. Like he was getting there. He was doing pretty good. I don't know why. I don't even see him online anymore. Maybe it's because his reputation. Maybe he just lost motivation. Um, but I think if he decided to start playing again, he could definitely get up there.
Um, and also, right when I asked the question, I kind of interrupted you by bringing up cognitive and complexity. Was there another team that you wanted to bring up, or?
Not really. A lot of, as I said, a lot of amateur teams like they're forgettable. If you're not at the very tip top, then like what are you in the amateur scene? You know, as shitty as that is. Yeah.
So actually, I wanted to. This is something I've wondered. Like, I've always had a theory that when putting together teams, managers also want to grab like kind of like big name players, I guess. Like for example, like Fabi, so they can be like, oh hey, look, like we're not just any amateur team. Like our amateur team has like Fabi on it. So would you
Uh,
say that this is definitely a thought? Like this is something that managers keep in mind when putting together challenger rosters?
it can be. It definitely can be. Um, I don't agree with it whatsoever, but that it definitely can be a factor. A lot of players like it. A lot of players with like big personalities who are well known are so hard to work with because like they have their own thoughts and they just won't budge on them. They'll insist that they're 100% correct. Like like always, they will not give up. So like molding them is extremely hard. Molding them into like play like as an example, okay, like there's players out there who like only want to play like certain champions, and they insist that those champions are the best. Or like there are some like I won't name any great players who say like, oh, we don't get better by scrimming as a team. We only get better by playing solo queue and becoming better individually. There's no point in scrimming because no one's good enough. Like I've heard that from people who play with like well-known players, and I don't know. They're not always the greatest to work with. So
I was gonna ask this question later on then, but if you were the manager of a challenger team, like how would you put the squad together?
um, I would honestly just try out like as many people uh, that send in applications. Like I wouldn't hold one big name over a smaller name just because they have that fan base or anything. Like you'd have to look strictly at their skill, their communication, and their confidence in themselves. A lot of players lack confidence in themselves, and they just choke in big tournaments and play awful, and that's a really big thing. Yeah, I mean, just you have to look at the player's individual skill. You cannot look at their fan base. Their fan base does not make them win tournaments. You know, teammate is a great example. Like a lot of those players, like they're not well known, but they're really good. You know.
Okay, so now I wanted to move on to kind of metagame thoughts slash hypotheticals.
Sure.
So what mid laners would you say are the strongest right now as you're now a mid laner?
Uh, strongest mid laners right now, I would say, are like Nidalee. 4.5, like, it just changed the game up so much. Poke is so much stronger. I don't think assassins are very good at all right now. With the exhaust change, like, you could, like, if someone picks an assassin, you can expect to see 2 to 3 exhausts on the other team, and you're not going to kill anybody. Like, you just won't, unless you're crazy good and you outplay them. Even then, like, someone just has to slap an exhaust on you, and you did no damage whatsoever. So, poke champions like Nidalee, uh, extremely good. I think Oriana is really good again. I mean, she's probably the most consistent mid pick where she's never bad, but well, halfway through every season she starts to become god tier again, and I think she's hitting that threshold. Um, Other really good mid picks, I think TF has a lot of potential. I've been seeing a lot of people starting to pick up TF. I know he didn't have that great of a success in the EU LCS tournament recently, but I definitely think he's there. I think SKT picked him up, Faker, and he's got pretty good success on him. Um, and Lulu is definitely still like pretty good. You can't ignore her, and that's about it. Basically, just poke champions. Poke champions are god right now.
What do you think
Yeah,
about the constant Soraka picks that have been coming in?
and Soraka. That's the one thing I forgot. Soraka is the dumbest thing in the world. Okay, like there's no dealing with that. She just runs up to you and like, take a banana, take a star call. It's like there's nothing you can do. Like it's so frustrating to play against her. She's god tier right now. So
So I wanted to ask a quick bit about what would you say is the difference between the mid lane role and the AD carry role, and what exactly prompted your switch?
there's a very big difference. Very big difference. AD carry is all about consistency and just like going even or winning lane. Like just farming it up, trading farm, and playing team fights incredibly well. Like all the farm you get is useless if you don't play team fights flawlessly. And the AD carry who's better will always be able to like win his team the game in team fights if the rest of the team is like pretty much equal. And like that really shows when you look at like Double Lift or Wild Turtles and players like that. The difference between AD and mid is that the mid lane has to make things happen that influence the game like pre 20 minutes. Like if you're just sitting there farming and like you watch the other mid laner roam bottom, top, jungle, get like 1,000 kills, and you're just like, well, I've got 50 more CS than him. Like it's all good. It's not like you have to make things happen. You have to always find a way to build a lead. And in mid lane, like there's a lot of ways that you can do that that are more creative. I want to say like farming enemy rays, farming your rays, like roaming bot, tower diving, roaming top, tower diving, setting up dragons for your team, denying vision. There's just so much you can do in mid lane, and the champ pool is a lot bigger. So, if you have a certain champion or playstyle that you really like and you're really good at it, you can carry games with that. Just because the first 20 minutes of the game are the most important, and mid and jungle affect the first 20 minutes of the game the most. So.
What would you describe your own playstyle as then?
My own place. I barely know my own play style right now. I think I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I haven't really settled into like a favorite champion or anything. I like running poke champions a lot. I like running Oriana, TF. I like pretty much every mid lane here on the game, and I think the play style that is best is just whatever play style wins, like farming up and looking for picks all the time. That's all it's about.
Would you say you're a
So yeah.
stronger mid laner than an AD carry?
That's debatable right now. I personally want to say I'm a stronger mid than an AD carry. Some people might disagree. Uh, I felt very closed in on AD carry because, as I said, I've been playing the game for a long time, so I understand a lot of the game mechanics and how to win. And in mid lane, I'm able to apply those a lot better. So I enjoy the role a lot more myself.
So now kind of I want to talk a little bit more about hypotheticals. So you did a role swap. Do you think there are other good like players in the challenger scene who could make a similar swap?
Yeah, definitely. Any player who's dedicated enough. All it takes to role swap is a decent understanding of the game and a lot of dedication. Since role swapping to mid about a month ago, I've been playing like 10 games a day or something around there, just like working super hard to make sure I have a good understanding of the role. Like any player who wants to do that can, you know. So I don't really have any names in particular, but I think a lot of players are capable of doing that. I mean, there's an example on my team right here. Like Haunter was originally a mid lane player and swapped to top and just put in the hours, dedicated himself to becoming a good top laner, and I'd say he's definitely well respected right now. He's a very very good top laner.
So there hasn't really been someone where you played them in, I guess, either role, and you're like, you should have been in the other role. Like you play a mid laner, and you're like, this guy plays like an AD carry, or no one like that.
Honestly, well, not really because oftentimes like you're just better with the role that you really identify with. If an AD carry decides to play mid one game, like he's probably gonna suck because he hasn't put in the hours to actually become good at mid. He's just randomly playing it. Some players are definitely just innately talented at like everything. A lot of like ex Dota players are like Link. Link is crazy. That dude can play any role on the map. Chowster was crazy. Play any role on the map. I don't really see any amateur players that could pull that right now, but yeah.
Um, Hang on. Sorry, hang on. Okay, sorry about that. Someone keeps
All
texting me
good.
about something. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's all good.
Okay, so now I wanted to ask about what would your thoughts be on the challenger scene? Like you seem to mention like oh there were like only two coke splits or like if you could like kind of reformat the challenger scene, how would you do so?
Um, I would make it so that it's actually like formatted similar to like NACL, so that it's actually or LCS itself. Like as it is right now, it's so weird. It's so weird to qualify. Like it's you have to win like two best out of ones. I don't know why a best out of one would be in a competitive game like for like a qualifier. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. That it's ridiculous. And then I mean the BO3s are fine. I think it would be better off as like standings like LCS though, and then like the top three teams at the end of each Coke split are then play in like a playoff or whatever, you know, and then actually have seeding. Yeah.
Okay. And then this will be my last question. So, if you could form a team of the strongest challenger players, who would you select?
Hmm. That's a tough one actually. Myself
In
and
mid or
everyone on
AD?
LMQ.
Yourself,
Mid.
yourself mid, and then everyone on LMQ.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, well, most of the times I've asked this question, people have selected the LMQ team. So let me ask it again. If assuming you cannot pick players from LMQ,
Oh man. Uh. Okay. Myself mid. I would say all tech for AD carry. For support,
wait, could you give like a quick clarification or explanation of why you'd pick these players?
right? All tech, because he's a standout player. That dude's crazy good. He's just like, as I said before, he's one of the most consistent AD carries in the amateur scene by far. I think if it wasn't for his age, he'd be picked up by an LCS team already. Um, can't really think of a support, so I'll go to jungle. Jungle, I would have to say, hmm, maybe like Pat or Heaven Time. I think Heaven Time is an incredibly good jungler. I think Patoy or not Patoy, sorry, Patu Pat from Curse Academy. That guy is insanely good as well. I would pick one of those two. Probably lean towards Heaven Time because it's my homie. Playing on the team together already. I would say Haunter for top lane, and for support, I would keep the dual lane together. Get Glebe. So, yeah.
All right. So right now, so do you have any like final words, closing statements, anyone to thank, or?
Right, I'd like to thank my sponsors, LawPro, LawClass, Nissan, Energems, Curse Voice, CM Storm, Absolute LoJack, and LastPass. And of course, Alienware, using their computer right now, so big shout out to them. Thank you very much. And thanks for the interview, man. I really appreciate you having me on here. It's awesome.
All right. Yeah. So thanks guys for watching. And so thanks so much to LOD for coming on here, and signing off.